I enjoy playing football and, pretending to be a boy actually made football easier.
Our guest today is one of the most inspiring and successful women in English football, Rachel Yankey, OBE.
There's a part of me that wishes I'd done more. Maybe the good part is that I was just being me, and maybe that's why people could relate to me.
Scored 19 international goals, was a member of the Team GB Olympic squad in 2012, as well as enjoying huge success in her club career, which included stints with Arsenal and Fulham ladies.
The biggest thank you has to be the way you've stood up and you spoke out for female footballers.
She led the way for many sportswomen who followed in her footsteps and continues to champion and be a voice for women in football. Welcome, Rachel. It's lovely to have you as a guest on Heroes Have Heroes. We're going to start with your quote, which is, remember who you are and what you represent.
Yeah.
Why have you chosen that?
It's something that was said to me when, I joined Arsenal probably 16 by Vicki, because it was kind of an Arsenal sort of motto. But I remember him personally saying it to me and kind of him asking me, do you understand? And of course, when you're 16, you go, yeah. I had no clue what he meant or what that meant to me and what he was trying to tell me, until there was one day that I was walking back from the chip shop, no Arsenal gear at all. This guy stopped me and said, you're that girl that plays for Arsenal. And at that point, I was kind of like, oh my gosh, what have I done wrong? And I was sort of a shocked look on my face, because no one had ever really stopped me or noticed or, cared that I played football. And he was just like, oh, yeah, you're really good. And he was praising me. He was so kind. But then I thought back to what Vic's words were. Remember who you are and what you represent. And realised this man, he didn't know my name. But he knew me as Arsenal Football Club. He knew me for representing Arsenal, representing women's football. And I think that was the moment I sort of realised what a responsibility I had. What do you represent? What do you want to be? What do you want to show people? And I tried to do that on the pitch and definitely off of it. I think at the moment it'd be, I represent, I'm a mother. I'm there. I want to make sure that I look after my kids, that I, do the right thing and try my best. I don't always get it right. Try my best to be a good role model to them. And also, I suppose, show them that we all make mistakes and we fail. I feel like that, pretty much every day. Being a parent is just crazy. I feel like you get it wrong, but you have to just get up and carry on. And that's probably the biggest thing I can show them, is that things will happen. And just like on the football pitch, things will happen. And it's about what you do after that. And it's about the choices that you make then. Being a role model, it was something that I didn't expect to be. Didn't really necessarily think about it, but understood the more I played, the more that people would come and speak to me and, say how they enjoyed the way that I played football, how much they could relate to how I looked and the colour of my skin, the way I had my hair, if it was braided. I think also, I don't think I fully appreciated it. When I finished playing, the messages that I got and the impact that it had on people's lives. Many people said that I was, the first footballer that they knew the name of, first female footballer that they saw, and how powerful that was.
Football aside for a moment, what was growing up like for you in your house, in your area? What are your memories of those times as a young child?
Yeah, happy growing up. I grew up with my mum and my older brother, Simon. I grew up in Brent, not too far from Wembley. For me, I just always enjoyed playing football. I think there was a park that was not too far, that at the end of our road. There was two boys that lived across the road. Me and those two boys, we'd always be down that park. My older brother. Funnily enough, he didn't really like playing football. He was more into like computer games and stuff like that. Where I think I just needed to be outside. I just needed to. But it's a different world to how it is now.
Yeah.
We used to just go, out of the house in the morning and be like, bye, Mum, and then come back at some whatever time.
When you're hungry.
Yeah, basically, when someone shouted dinner.
Yeah.
I loved playing football. My mum would encourage us to do whatever sports. I remember me and my brother were at like a running club and stuff like that. So I was very sporty. I think, obviously, as a parent, you're always there for your kids and you always want to have their best interests at heart. But, it can be difficult, especially, my mum was a single parent, bringing up 2 young kids, on her own. She had to be mum and dad, and also she was a carer for my nan. I remember my mum always being worried about money and how we were going to get money. That other people would always sort of say, why do you let her play football? And, she should concentrate on education and school really is important. And I just think my mum got me and understood that if for me to be me and be enjoying things and actually be successful in what I did and whatever that may be, it was about me finding my own pathway. It probably wasn't that easy for her to always watch me play football, especially as I grew in the game and became more established. My mum's white, and I think sometimes when she'd sit in the stand, people didn't necessarily see her as my mum. And I remember it probably took a long time afterwards, but I remember her telling me stories about how parents would be saying stuff about me, not nice stuff. I feel that she probably went through a lot of things that maybe angered her, but she kept her cool and, because she wanted me to play and maybe step back a little bit because she wanted me to, I don't know, just succeed and find myself and be happy. Things like that, I think I'll always be grateful. She's been my rock and, probably don't tell her enough, but, just thank you.
And your brother, Simon, you mentioned he wasn't really into football, he's more into video games. What was his influence, do you feel, on you then that was so significant?
I think probably because he was so into computer games and he was better than me, I couldn't handle it. So therefore I wanted to go out of the house and play football. So he probably was the biggest inspiration of getting me out of the house to play, because if I had to play him in the computer games, I'd lose and then I'd get angry and frustrated. So I'd have to do something that I knew that I was better at than him at. No, I think as we grow up, usually young kids, you just want to be like your older sibling. I wanted to be like my big brother and copy everything, so probably to his annoyance. I never really asked questions about my dad and why my mum and dad weren't together, and I never really felt like I was missing something, but I know that my brother did. And I think maybe that was harder on him, I suppose maybe pinnacle moments in your life when you're a man, like learning to shave and stuff like that. Who's there to teach you those things if you don't have guidance from a male figure? Because normally when you go into primary school, the teachers are women. So you've gone from, definitely in my case, being at home with a woman all the time, to then going into primary school with majority. I remember there was 1 or 2 male teachers, but not many. And then secondary school, you may see a few more male teachers. So I just think, for me, who was my male role model, it would probably be my coaches in football. But then I look to my brother and I think, well, who was his male role models? And then I look to I've got 2 daughters, obviously they have their dad, but, who are these? And I think it's really important that we kind of look into the difference between men and women and the roles that they play within your life, that you're, I don't know, well-rounded and comfortable with who you are. I suppose as I got older, recognising that, maybe life was a little bit more difficult for a boy growing up. maybe life was maybe a little bit more difficult for being the older sibling to the younger one. The younger one usually gets protected, and I'm just proud of how he's dealt with different issues that he's had in his life. Takes an inner strength, something that, for me, I kicked a ball around and people praise me and say how wonderful it was. But I think for him, in terms of how he got himself through, difficult times, I think that's a bigger strength, and that's, bigger bravery than anything that I've done on a football pitch. But I don't think that he fully appreciates and understands, how strong he is. So, yeah, that's why he's my hero. There wasn't, in the area that we grew up in, there definitely wasn't a girls' team, but there wasn't even really boys' team. So it was kind of like me and Michael and Lawrence, who lived across the road. I think I was a year older than Michael. And their friend's dad was setting up a team. He wasn't a coach. He wasn't a qualified coach, but he just basically put on sessions in a sports hall, and I sort of tagged along. It was Lawrence that sort of said that, it's going to be all boys. So let's call you Ray. I don't think I'd even worked out that my initials spell Ray. I don't think I was that clever. They were getting their hair cut. I was in a barber's. The barber said next customer, sat me down on a chair, and I just was like, I'll have my hair like those. So, yeah, shaved all my hair off. I enjoy playing football, and, pretending to be a boy actually made football easier, because people saw boys playing football. People, watched me play football, and the fact that how I moved, how I kicked the ball, how I ran, they couldn't possibly, think that a girl could do that. I think I felt quite happy pretending to be something that I wasn't. The manager, Tony Chelsea, he knew that I was a girl. He, changed a lot of things. Like we used to go in his van. He was a paint and decorator, so we used to pile in the back of his van.
Brilliant.
And obviously there's no seatbelts or anything. Totally illegal. And like we turn a corner and we'd all go that
it's
way.
All right,
It was fantastic. The only things he did differently is he made sure that I had my kit. Mm. So I got changed at home and then put a tracksuit over the top. Like things that, as an 8-year-old, I wasn't thinking about, that, like the changing rooms and stuff like that. But he'd thought about that. And I remember when we played in I think it was a cup final. One of the boys from the other team I think I went to school with him, and he knew me. And he basically grasped me up to the ref. Yeah. It was Tony that said to me, "Oh no, it's not your fault, because as a young kid, you don't know why am I not playing? Why can't I play?" He showed that protection in me. He went above and beyond, because he didn't need to go and find me a girls' team. Once that final was over and I wasn't allowed to play, he could have just, that's it. It doesn't really matter anymore. But he went and purposely, asked the question, found me another team, made sure that I could get to that training, found me someone to go with. Did a lot for me that, I really do feel grateful for. I probably look back at the things that he'd done for me as a youngster and wanted to make sure that I could offer that to young children, that safe space of playing football, being non-judgmental. There was other players in the team that, it wasn't about us being elite. It was just about us having fun. So for me, it was about following in the footsteps of what he'd taught me as a youngster and what he'd given me. I admired that. And I think that's why I look at him as a role model to me, in terms of where I've gone with my coaching and how I look at the fact that football is for everybody and should be for everybody. I'd been told that I couldn't play for the boys' team. He was at a meeting and he said, "Well, what do I do with this player? I've got a girl in my team. She's very good. Like, where does she go?" And it was Mill Hill United that put their hand up, and I could have gone anywhere. And they said, we have a girls' team, we'll take her. I probably was quite shocked and amazed that there were so many girls playing football and that they were good. They were really good. Some of the girls could do like amazing kick-outs, and it was just like, wow. Playing for Mill Hill, I felt really comfortable. I felt at home. I felt like, yeah, I enjoyed it. But when we played against other teams, that's when it was difficult. There I was playing as me, as Rachel, but I still looked like a little boy. Some of the things that I could hear people say, I remember coaches sort of saying, you know, basically, take down the shorts and prove that I'm a girl.
Wow.
Yeah, I remember parents of the other teams would shout on, you know, why have they got a boy? How are you allowing a boy to play? And stuff like that. So obviously those things constantly, you know, trying to justify that you're a girl when I've been pretending for so long that I was a boy. It was really
ironic.
Yeah, it was really weird. Other than that, I think I just grew to be comfortable within me. And I think I took it as, you know, people are only sort of saying things to me to try and put me off of playing, to try and stop me. And then understanding a little bit as you grow up, you sort of understand football you think is just, you know, a technical game. But there's so much more. There's so much more mental, you know, sort of input that you play in the game.
So playing for Arsenal then, I mean, tell me about how that came about.
Well, funny enough, I was playing for my secondary school team. So we there was like a Camden Girls League, and the referee for the Camden Girls League was Vic Akers. And he came up to me and was like, oh, you know, you're a very good player. Do you play for a team? And I very proudly sort of said, I play for Mill Hill United, because I really enjoyed playing for Mill Hill United. And he was like, oh, you know, obviously I run Arsenal. If ever you wanted to come across or whatever training sessions. And I was like, no, because I play for Mill Hill United. And I think that's, my mum's always sort of said, you always stood up for people and you were a very loyal person. And that was my team. So it was only when I remember Vic asking me again. So it was now the time that I was like, yeah, do you know what? I would like to go. And I'd like to go and see if I was good enough. And I had Mill Hill United saying, you know, stay here, you're a future captain, you know, be part of this on our journey. They were a league below Arsenal. They had a really, really good team. There's lots of players that went on from Mill Hill to play for England. And then the opportunity to go to Arsenal. Natasha Daly told me the stories about her meeting up with Vic. She went to Highbury in one of the boxes, you know, met with him, had conversations, her and her dad, like, I don't know, signed registration forms, and she was signed. And I was like, wow, as an Arsenal fan, I was like, you went to Highbury, you're in the boxes, this is amazing. I was like, wow, I can't wait. I'm going to go there. I went to like the JVC Centre, which is the back of Highbury, the sports hall. I met with the fourth team manager, Tony Milton, and was told that I was basically, you know, I'd be signed for the fourth team and, you know, we'd go from there. And I was kind of like, oh my gosh, have I made a massive mistake? So I never played for the fourth team. I played for the reserves, I think, once or twice, and then I was on the bench for the first team. So, yeah, it's just, I don't know, maybe sometimes you have to take a little leap of faith and a bit of risk and, I don't know, follow your heart maybe. When I first saw my name on an Arsenal shirt, it was amazing. You know, to see your shirt hanging up, your name on it, your number. Yeah, just incredible. It probably is a massive feeling to, even when you know, you haven't stepped out and played yet, but just to feel part of it, it's huge. I'm not sure I could put it into words, to be quite honest.
What was it like to be right in that environment and that just high-performance team?
Actually, my first season, we got to the semi-finals of the FA Cup, and we got beaten. But I remember we had to go to the final. Like, basically, we were like, it was Vicky, he was like, we're all going to watch it.
Wow.
Yeah. And we sat there in the stands, and that, I couldn't understand, like, it was horrible. And there you feel like sick in your stomach watching it, and you're just thinking, this should have been us. That made you want to step up and then the next time, and then getting to a final. Although we weren't professional, we trained 2 nights a week. He held us to a standard that we had to, abide by, and that's, if you wanted to play for Arsenal, you had to be this sort of way. The history of that football team was huge. Once you play for Arsenal, then you were playing in front of crowds and fans, and even when they were booing you, that was quite fun sometimes, because then you could do things that ultimately you'd make them quiet. If I look back at 2007 being, the best moment in Arsenal women's history, winning the quadruple, doing something that no other team, male or female, has done. But at the time, we just moved on to the next one. And maybe that's what kept us focused. Yeah, I'd definitely say moving to Arsenal was a challenge, and one that I relished.
Talk to me about a couple of the players that you feel most influenced your football career.
Oh, I mean, the number one standout is Ian Wright. I think for me, just the passion, the emotion, how he played, it was just so relatable. We used to run around the school playground trying to be Ian Wright. That's how we felt. We could see what we had on the cage when we were playing at school. He was bringing to life in, the highest league in the Premier League. So who he showed he was as a person was always quite inspiring to me. The game lasts 90 minutes plus, and, you could see that he'd never give up. He might have played not so well for 89, but then got that last minute goal, and it was like the best thing in the world. And I feel honoured to have met him, because I've met my hero. I remember, a first meeting when the women's team had won a cup, and obviously the men's team had done that, and there was a bus around Islington, and we were on one of the buses behind. But when we went to the town hall, and all the players, all the male players, all the female players were all in the same place, and I'm kind of just staring at Ian Wright all the time, weirdly. To look at someone as big as Ian Wright, with as much power with his platform, to be able to show that he sees football as just football. When he talks about female footballers, he talks about their strengths, their weaknesses. It's like passionate about how he speaks about them in terms of like the game and how they're playing and who they are, and the same way that he would talk about a male footballer. That's how we grow the game. I think many people thought that Arsenal was all about, tactics and coach. We didn't, we'd train in the JVC centre early years, and Vic Akers, as good as he was fantastic at recruiting players. I don't recall him putting on sessions, like a stop, stand, still session or anything like that. He'd just make us play, and we played loads of it was a 7-a-side pitch, basically, JVC. We played loads of 7-a-side games, and you just put restrictions in. It was either 1 or 3 touch, or you could score with a first-time finish. Or, he'd just teach us to control the pace and the tempo of the game. And that's all we did. We just played. And I think he let us be. There was rarely times that we did anything that was structured.
So was that a massive shift for you then at England? Because
yeah, 100%. I remember my first sort of trip away, and Ted Copeland.
Yeah.
He was talking about dishes and waves, and I was thinking, what's this guy going on about? I had no clue. We didn't talk about anything like that at Arsenal. And the structure and patterns of doing things, and all this stop and stand still. And
why are you doing it?
Yeah, why? And it was just like, what is going on? I remember him talking directly to me once, and I'm looking around behind, because I was thinking, are you talking to me? I was like, I literally don't know what. Even if we played the same formation at England at Arsenal, we were playing very different. I felt like playing for Arsenal, you could be free and you could be trusted to go forward and attack, and I don't know, be really creative and take risks. And also you were mentally, whoever we were playing against, we were trying to always put them on the back foot of like, you be worried about me. Where at England, it was the total opposite. It was like, we need to worry about that team, and defensively I need to do this. And that wasn't the strong part of my game. And like having to sort of learn that and understand that ultimately makes you better. But then in a way, I feel like it made me more cautious. It made me, do I go forward at this time? Or should I stay back? Because what happens if we lose it? I'm not back in that position. So it made you, I don't know, it made you think a lot more. It made you maybe not do things that I possibly would have done.
And then another that you mentioned is Raheem Sterling, a very different character and different type of player to Ian Wright.
I think with Raheem, it's not really him as a footballer, because I'm a lot older than him. But Raheem Sterling, I coached when he was at school. Raheem, the way he played football, I can only describe it as like a dancer. It was like, it was so beautiful to watch him play. His movement, how he you know, how he moved the ball, but how he caressed, how he moved across the pitch, and I don't know, his touch was unbelievable. I think he was probably about 8 when I coached him. I'm glad he became a footballer, because he needed to be a footballer because of how good he was. At that time, I remember speaking to the teachers and being like, this boy is unbelievable. Who does he play for? And they were like, he's not ready to play for a team. The worry is that the outbreaks, if things weren't going his way, how he would react, the anger. Now, why I admire him is because you would never know that if you didn't. Well, I don't think you would. If you didn't know his backstory, to look at him as a Premier League player, wow. Is a winger or a forward, he gets kicked every game. He gets taken out. And he gets up, he brushes himself down and he goes again. And because I've done that and I know how hard it is, especially when, you know, he plays in front of massive crowds and, you know, you have players say things to you on the pitch, say what they're going to do, purposely, you know, say things that they're going to kick you, they're going to do this. How he can control his temperament and play the game, I admire. I truly, truly admire that.
Do you feel like you fulfilled your potential, and did you retire thinking, I'm content with what I've done?
I think that, no, probably not. I think there's always a part of me that would have always wanted to do more, and even silly things like I didn't start as a winger. I started as centre forward, and learning to play on the wing compared to centre forward is totally different. And it's hard because then obviously as the game gets bigger, you've got commentators speaking about you and they're speaking about what they see as the football in their opinion, but they don't know what you've been asked to do. So those things mentally are quite tough. So asking coaches, you know, what do I do in these situations, and not ever getting a real response or a helpful response was always something that I sort of struggled with and felt like I could be better. But then, am I content with the way that I played and how I played? Yeah, I am. But I think there'll always be a part of me, probably because of the way that we grew up at Arsenal, that you always want to push for more and you always want the standard to be better and you always want to maybe give a little bit more, and you always think that you can offer something more to the game.
All the England caps and appearances you had, and of course with GB as well at the Olympics, and where were you when the Lionesses won the Euros, and how did that feel to know that you'd been such a massive part of that legacy?
Just like, wow, this is huge. But I feel like the whole way through my England career, we always sort of used to say, you know, if we was to go and win something, if we was to go and get to a final, win a final, how it would change perceptions and how that would just be huge for the game. And that was kind of that moment. This is what we've been waiting for. I remember standing in the stands and again, just watching people celebrate, watching people cry, getting text messages of people like telling me like I'm in tears, and I didn't have tears. And I was just more like, wow. But I felt like a bit proud because I had my daughter there. She got to experience that. She just doesn't really understand, but it was just like, she's cheering, and like it was just like, wow, this is cool. But that we have to push on from here. This can't go back to what it was. Like, it'd be criminal if it goes back to what it was, because this is what we've been waiting for. That moment of like, winning something, showing everybody that we are good enough. We're good enough to sell out Wembley. We're good enough to be on the big stage. We're, good enough to play. To Ian Wright, Righty, I would just like to say thank you. Thank you for being you. I know your journey into football wasn't an easy one, and I suppose that's why I think that I can relate and understand, and many other people can relate and understand to you as a footballer. But also, I think the biggest thank you from me as a female footballer, I loved the way you played football. I loved the way you scored goals and you celebrated and you did those dances, which I couldn't do. But the biggest thank you has to be the way you've stood up and you spoke out for female footballers. The determination, the drive that you had as a young footballer to succeed, the resilience you showed to become a professional footballer with all the barriers that you went through. I feel like you get the barriers and you understand the barriers that female players go through. And you stand up and you shout about it and you call out when things are wrong. So for that, I would like to say thank you. And that's why, as a youngster, you were my hero, but you'll always still be my hero. So thank you, Ian. Keep doing what you're doing.